Hello, welcome once again to Senior Focus. I'm your host, Bill Adams, and we come to you a couple times each month on Armstrong's channel 20 and 100. And we want to thank Greg Roden from Armstrong for allowing us to come into your homes. Also, if you missed part of the show or you want to see it again, you could always go to OnDemand. And also, Greg's nice enough to put it up on YouTube, and you just put in Senior Focus and Armstrong Cable, and you'll be able to see the show. And as always, we thank Keith Kaiser for allowing us to be at the Davis Visitor Center. And I could do that in person today because Keith is here to give us a little update on what's going on at the Davis Center and in the park in general, the MetroParks. So welcome, Keith.
Thank you. Glad to be here and glad that you're here promoting what's happening at Fellows Riverside Gardens.
Well, we're coming out of, we hope, we're coming out of a long winter. And this is a good time because March, people start thinking about the outdoors and all the good things that come with spring. And we're just going to talk, I guess, a lot about what's going on right now. Do you want to start with what's going on right now? Or?
People might say, well, I'm not going to go to Fellows Riverside Gardens today. There is actually nothing to see. It's the middle of winter. Well, it's not the middle of winter. It's nearing the end of winter. And I'd say, you know what? There's lots to see and do. Even if you only went outside and took a walk on a beautiful sunny day like today, where it is going to get up in the high 40s, you will see some color in the gardens, some actual flowers in bloom. Well, what would those be that are in bloom? It's the witch hazels. The small shrub, or large shrub, small tree plant that's a woody plant. Yellows, orange, pinks, reds, those shades of colors. Now, they're not in all the beds filling the colors or filling the gardens just like tulips do. But you could, if you open your eyes, you'll see some amazing little flowers in bloom. On cold days, they roll their petals right back up, and in the nighttime they do as well. But they're probably one of the plants that blooms the longest for us. They've been in bloom already for a couple weeks, and we'll get some more out of them.
Wow, so they're very hardy then with the outdoors.
They sure are.
Well, and indoors, of course, if you just look around here, I mean, you've got a beautiful display of the orchids.
We are.
And this is going to be going on for a while. So
about the middle of March. We start February 1st, say through March 15th. It's hard to say there's an ending date because it's not like we're going to cut the flowers off if they're done, on March 15th. So by that time, the majority of them will have been through their bloom cycle. But if there's still some in bloom, of course, they're going to still be here. But that's pretty much when the main exhibit will be about done. So we've got lots of color, really beautiful flowers, and just the diversity of this plant species is amazing. There's actually nearly 30,000 species of orchids that naturally grow on the earth, which is pretty amazing. And it's about 880 different genus or genera that make up the orchid family, which is called the Orchidaceae.
So I imagine people, and there probably are scientists who just spend their entire career just studying the orchids.
Yes. And books, I think one of the largest collections of books we have in our library is about orchids. So it's huge. This and the plant family that is called Asteraceae, so sunflowers and asters and that's the other really large family of blooming plants. And, plants are divided into these plant families, and they're based on the characteristics of these plants, but usually it's the arrangement and how the flowers themselves look and their reproductive parts and the other petals and so on are arranged on that flower. That's how they're grouped together.
Now, you've had a series of activities regarding orchids, and I know there's some also coming up.
Yes.
What are some of those?
We've had a number of walkthroughs where it's led by a staff or a volunteer that's very knowledgeable about orchids, as well as some actual classes. So coming up yet in in March is a walkthrough on the 4th. It's Tuesday morning from 10 to noon. We do ask that you call and register for that, as well as if you see it listed, we have an orchid clinic, one of the actual classes on the 6th. It is full, but we have added March 17th. It's St. Patrick's Day, but it's March 17th, and that'll be our last class. It's in the evening, 6:30 to 8:30. Dave Miller and Jackie Lund are our volunteers that are just amazing with orchids. They help lead those classes. There is a fee, and I'm cheating to get over to look at the list. It is $20 for the evening class, or $15 if you're a member.
Okay. And then again, that's one of the benefits of becoming a member of the Friends of the Gardens.
Right.
You get discounts on programs like that.
Yep.
Now, with the, are there a lot of people in the area that, obviously, if it's the one that's sold out, or there must be a lot of people
two
interested.
or three sessions already of this orchid clinic, and we take 15. So it's spreading. This is I believe, our third year for this midwinter orchid exhibit, and called Jewels of Winter, and undoubtedly it helps spread the orchid connection or orchid bug or whatever it is, because we sell orchids here through our shop in the gardens. Actually, these are some of the ones that are for sale. These are just wonderful blooming little plants, as well as they start to finish bloom in our show, we sell the unblooming ones. So you get hooked easily when you buy some of these things.
Well, you know, my wife and I were here a little while ago, maybe a week or so ago, and just to smell the aroma of the orchids and to see all this color, you know, let's face it, after a long, hard winter, it really is worth the trip over to
for sure
experience
and
it.
take your time and look close at each flower and see the differences and the similarities, and then you'll find little signs that describe to you maybe an interesting characteristic or point about that plant. And you might even find something like this hanging on one of them, and they'll say, "What in the world is that?" Well, if you like to cook and do baking and maybe make ice cream, you might recognize these as vanilla beans, and they truly are the seed pods from one of the orchids that is the vanilla orchid. It actually says vining orchid right here. Now, you won't see flowers indoors, even hardly in greenhouses at conservatories. You don't. They just are not going to bloom indoors. It's just not the right conditions. But the plant will live beautifully, and we then show people the connection of this seed pod that's been fermented. And if you smell that, it's that wonderful vanilla fragrance. Right. Yep. And how people use this is they slice open the seed pod, scrape out the actual seeds, and that's that fleck of bean that you see in ice cream that says with real vanilla bean seed. It's the seed or what's inside this seed pod. This probably is the one most economic-based plant out of the orchid plant family. We have lots of plants that give us lots of crops and food that we eat, from apples and bananas and all those things. But of the orchid plant family, the vanilla, you kind of wonder, how did that ever come about? And there's whole stories and how that happened. So that's exciting.
And again, the orchid is just one of the plants that you can learn about here. You've got gardening. I'm just looking at some of the things under horticulture, some of the programming. You've got clinics on just the basics of how to do gardening.
That's right. We have programming classes here at the gardens for people from 3-year-olds up till as old as they want to be. Classes going on, workshops. We take garden tours. Health and wellness, kind of healthy living, like Tai Chi and yoga and Pilates take place here at the gardens. We have a lot of cooking classes a couple times a month. And then throughout the MetroParks, there's all the other classes that relate to the rest of the natural world, such as birds and insects and hikes in the park district anywhere. So if someone isn't, if they think they need something to do and they haven't found it, they should look at the website or pick up one of our calendars.
Sure, and this is sort of hot off the press. This is for coming up in March. Well, one of the things coming up, I know, is the tour that you're taking with a group up to Cleveland.
That's right. We, through the Friends of Fellows Riverside Gardens, do 2 or 3 trips a year. We have 3 scheduled this year. Our first one is April 24th, and it's called A Day of Asian Culture. One of our board members, YT Chu, here at the Gardens, has a interest in sharing his culture, which he's Japanese, to our community at large. So he teaches some cooking classes for us here. So then we decided, well, let's take a trip with him to Cleveland, and he's going to lead us in some of the Asian markets in Cleveland, some of the grocery stores. We'll have lunch. Some dim sum, and then we'll go on to visit some of the gardens that relate to this Asian culture. So we'll stop at Cleveland Botanical Garden, see the Japanese garden there. We'll see The Chinese garden at the Cultural Gardens, the Cleveland Cultural Gardens, will head over to the Cleveland Art Museum and see their newly opened edition and expanded collections, again, Asian culture, and then end up with more food for dinner.
Well, I could almost guarantee that, unless maybe you know someone or you're part of the Asian culture, you probably haven't experienced those things.
They may not have, that's right.
And so this would be a great opportunity, for anyone who, just wants to learn and expand their cultural horizons.
That's right, yep.
And again, it's all within an hour or so of
we take a coach, and all you have to do is be here that morning on time, have paid your fee ahead of time, and just show up, because we'll take care of the rest of the day for them. And it really is fun to travel with people who have like interests, and you really become friends with these new gardeners, travelers. So we actually, later in the year, we have a day trip kind of to northeastern Ohio, seeing a few natural areas, and then our large trip this year is 3 nights to the Hudson River Valley. So kind of north of New York City, up along the Hudson River. We'll see, again, gardens and landscapes, a lot of history there, dates back to the 1600s, as well as a lot of art and painting.
Yeah, I think the Rockefellers and a lot of old money in that area.
Yep.
Yeah.
As well as some of our visitors might remember the Thomas Cole exhibit that we had right in the same space.
Right.
We'll be visiting Thomas Cole's home and studio and seeing where he was inspired to paint about that Hudson River Valley.
Well, speaking of painting, right now, and it's continuing, you have a wonderful exhibit in the Weller Gallery.
We do. It's a local man who uses watercolor, and it's amazing. Some of the pictures look like they're actually photographs. The detail uses a very dry technique, so it isn't a lot of wet brush technique, which means it's a little more fuzzy, I'm going to call it, versus very specific and detailed, like his work.
And that I recall a couple. I mean, he's got the one with the jukebox, that painting, but also the. I was remarking again to my wife about the. I think it's the turtle on the beach, and he's waiting for the dinosaurs to catch up.
Yeah.
But he's got a lot of nature scenes, and so that's a regular. You have rotating exhibits that come in and out.
That's right, in the Weller Gallery. So this one is up through sometime in March, I believe. I don't know the exact date. And then our next exhibit that comes is about. Actually, it's on this page. I just remembered.
Sure.
So that's through the 23rd of March. The next one that goes on April, May, June is plant spirals. That's a traveling exhibit that comes to us from Smith College, the Lyman Plant House. And they have put together an exhibit about some of the interesting patterns that are formed in nature. Think of how cones, like a pine cone or a Nautilus seashell, has that spiraling pattern. It's called Fibonacci.
Okay.
And that's what the exhibit's about. So it's called Plant Spirals, the beauty you can count on.
Okay.
So that'll be fun for people to learn from, actually.
Now, and also this is listed on the special events coming up. Well, it's ongoing now. You've got in the museum, you've got a photography exhibit.
Yep, that just opened earlier this month, or in January, where we. In our museum collection, we have glass negatives, and these are from the early 1900s. They were taken by two local men here in Youngstown, and of course, many of the scenes are in Mill Creek Park, winter scenes, many of them. So we've created a way for you to see these old glass plate negatives by pushing a button, and they're backlit.
Okay.
Plus, we've printed off these slides, so you can look at them as black and white photographs. And then we were able to, on loan from the Mahoning Valley Historical Society, bring in a collection of old cameras that are really fascinating to look at, including one that would been used to take these photographs, the glass plate ones. It sits about this big. It would have been on a tripod. As well as down to cameras that are about this big.
Oh.
So it's really kind of a fun exhibit to see the cameras over a period of time that also were collected.
Yeah, and those photographs and the glass plates that you're looking at, those are from around 80 years ago, I believe, the 1920s, 90 years
even
ago.
1909, I think.
100 years.
So 100, yeah.
Well, And there's one other listing here. There is I guess it's amateur photography over at the Ford Nature Center.
That's right. It opens here this week. Well, by the time this airs, it will have opened. That's right. Our nature photography exhibit, which typically has been at the Gardens the last couple of years, is moving back to its original home, which is at the Ford Nature Center. And they're very excited to have it back in their place and all the visitation that will take place around that exhibit. So please, if you're looking for that, it's still here. It didn't go away. It's just back at the Ford Nature Center.
And again, depending on when you see this, you should have time to check into one really interesting thing, at least for me, because I love watching the sky and looking at stars. But you have something coming up, March 1st?
That's right. Out at the MetroParks Farm, March 1st. It's Saturday evening from 7 to 10. It's free. I don't believe you have to register or anything for that. We're partnering with the Mahoney Valley Astronomical Society to give the opportunity to people to look up at the stars and the moon or whatever's out in that night sky. Hopefully it'll be a really clear night that's probably cold, so you have lots of contrast with the dark sky against the stars and things, and not covered over by clouds.
Well, that would be a good location too, because it's a little further out in the country. I go out in my driveway, and of course we got the street lights, and have to try to block that. But when you're out at the farm, you're going to have a lot less light pollution, I guess.
Excuse me. One more class, and it's more of a larger program that we do here at Fellows of Riverside Gardens, is our Master Gardener Volunteer Training Program. And many people, we've been doing that since 1985, so lots of people have gone through this program. It continues to still be very popular. It will be starting here it actually starts March 4th. We happen to have some spots still open, so if somebody's interested, please call as soon as they can to the Gardens, and we'll get you signed up if you're interested. Remember, it's a season-long program, so it starts here in March. It officially ends in October at the banquet. And it's a training program for you to learn about the basics of gardening, but it also is really a training program for our volunteers. Many of these people stay on as volunteers. For instance, last year at Fellows of Riverside Gardens, we had over 18,000 hours put in by volunteers, and many of them come through that Master Gardener program. So that's still happening. And again, still have some seats available.
Yeah, speaking of the volunteers, you want to talk about some of the work that they do? What are some of the different activities they're involved with?
If it happens here at Fellows Riverside Gardens, there's probably some volunteers involved somehow. If it's from planting seedlings or washing containers, flats, and pots at this time of year, to transplanting and then putting them out in the gardens, helping to plant bulbs in the fall, dig them up in May, weed in the garden, whatever, to in the Davis Center, to helping us with special events or school programs or just garden tours of groups, in our gift shop, the Shop at the Gardens, or in our library, our orchid exhibit. There's volunteers helping do something, and we have a volunteer coordinator, Bridget, who would be glad to talk with anybody who's interested in being a volunteer. It's a great thing. We have some kind of ability. If you're interested, you don't have to just have a love for gardening. You just have to have a love for people and appreciation for your community, and we'd love to find a place for them to help us out.
Well, we probably should at this point give the contact information if somebody wanted to call about volunteering or just learn about what's going on.
To reach us here at Fellows Riverside Gardens, the phone number is 330-740-7116. Of course, if you are interested in finding out more detailed things about Mill Creek MetroParks as a whole, you can go to our website. Just a few months ago, we released a whole brand new website, a lot of new marketing initiatives happening. So if it's happening in the MetroParks, you can find it on the website or through Facebook or Flickr or Instagram or any of those things. It's available there.
All the new technology. Yep. And you had the books out about orchids, and that reminds me, there's the book sale still going on?
Yes, but that will end this week, so it ends the 26th or something like that. But each year, we do have a Twice Loved Books sale. We are particular to how we connect with our visitors in reference to plants, so that book sale does not have books on mysteries and how do you fix your car, but you can find books on cooking and nature and photography and hobbies, and of course all about flower arranging and gardening and landscaping for your home. So save your books. If you're done with them, bring them in, and we'll be glad to use them in our book sale next year.
And that just reminds me that you do have the library, which is open to the public to
The library
use.
is open, the hours at the Davis Center is open, which is Tuesday through Sunday, 10 to 5. The library is a browsing library. The public can come into it and look up a question, but they cannot take out a book unless they're a member of the Gardens.
Okay, but another good reason to become a member. Now, we're also nearby. You've got the store, which you mentioned.
Shop in the Gardens.
The shop
That's
in the
right.
Gardens. And now, is that where the seeds or the plants and
they
things?
do sell seed from Renee's garden, if you're familiar
Okay.
with Renee's Shepherd's seeds. And then orchids that are in bloom, that are nice and healthy like these, are for sale there, as well as many other items that, of course, are in the shop in the Gardens. We started a new initiative in our library called the Seed Library, and maybe we can get a little close-up of that. The Seed Library is more of a way to exchange seed with whomever, we'll call them all gardeners, that may be interested in trying some of these plants that we have from seed. They were either seed donated to us by our volunteers, staff, whomever, or a few of them maybe grown here at the Gardens. And then we bought a few seeds, some of the vegetable seeds, but they are free for people to take from the library. Check out this seed pack, grow this sunflower at home this summer.
Okay.
In the fall, harvest it and return, like you might return a book, return some seed for next year so we can continue that program. It's just a nice community project.
And that's a new idea, right?
It is, yes.
Well, you've got also, besides all of the classes and things we've talked about, you've got a lot of things related to health, well-being. You talked about cooking classes, but you also got things like yoga. And,
That's right. And actually, one last thing that I want to share with the public. Here in the MetroParks, we were fortunate to, we now have a trolley. It's not a huge trolley, but it can be used for up to about 15 people. And we are its kind of debut is starting on the 15th of March. We're calling it Cabin Fever. There's 2 time periods. You can hop on the trolley at the Ford Nature Center and visit some of the sites in Mill Creek Park. I'm sure we'll be doing this throughout the year. And it also will be a rentable trolley that, say, a wedding party wants to have their wedding here at the Gardens in the gazebo, then they want to go down to Pioneer Pavilion or someplace in the park and have their pictures taken. They could rent this and then come back for the reception or whatever. So call the MetroParks office and or look into that.
That's a new
feature.
idea. And it looks as though it goes for about an hour and a half, so it'll take you just around the park, and what a deal that is.
It's enclosed. The back has sides that roll up, so in the summer months it will be able to open up. So you'll be able to drive right through Mill Creek Park in an open air vehicle.
And that's a lot easier than I'm thinking of the summer when you have the pedal boats out on the lake. That's a lot of work. This way, you just sit back and it takes you around. But it is good. Speaking of that, the boats and you've got kayaking and again we're getting into the warm weather. But there's so many things to do both here at the Davis Center and all throughout the MetroParks. And again, you can come and get the new March calendar here. Are there other some other activities we haven't touched on yet?
I think we've done most of them. If we had a few more minutes, we'll talk a little bit about orchids. How about? Because people are fascinated with that. And what kind do I start with? What would grow good at home? Well, the ones that we're selling are geared towards ones that would grow well at home. So the ones I brought around the table here are including this one, which we call it's a papilopelium, we call it the lady slipper orchid. It does well. They grow well. This one and also these are miniatures, which are quite adorable. Phalaenopsis, or the moth orchid, they both grow well in the home, and when they're not in bloom on your kitchen table or whatever, and you're growing them just to keep them alive, they do really well under fluorescent lights. So you can grow them in light gardens at home. Oncidiums, maybe some of the Cattleya types, and others that are even here on display, the Cymbidiums. Again, if you learn the characteristics that they need throughout the year, you can be very successful at home. But the moth orchids and the lady slipper are the 2 that you'd want to start with first.
What are some of the flowers that'll be coming up? You talked about some that are out there already,
Well,
but
the
in March
hazels are
and
blooming.
yeah,
Yep.
April.
The minute we have some warm weather and the snow melts, there'll be some lots of things in bloom. Bill, we planted 72,000 bulbs last fall for spring display, so
Wow.
I think that'll be a nice display for people to see.
72,000.
72,000, yes.
And I imagine some of those were with the help of volunteers. They were,
Yes,
yeah.
staff and volunteers, of course.
Sure. Yeah.
Put in a lot of those, and remember, we have to dig those all out in this at the end of by the end of May. So it's fun.
Well, the tulips come up. That's a
And
regular.
that's the tulips. Of that 70 some thousand, probably 30, about almost 30 some thousand are tulips. So when I said that number, that's all just our display beds, not permanent ones. We put in another, I think, 4,000 daffodils as permanent display, and many other little bulbs too.
Now, we only have a couple minutes to go, but again, if people are interested in, I mean, you've got rooms for rent, you've got the hall and things like that. Who do they contact and how would they get a hold of you?
Whoever answers the phone at the information desk can direct someone to whatever their concern would be or their question. And just calling the gardens, again, that number is 330-740-7116, or go to millcreekmetroparks.org, and that'll get them all the information they need.
Okay. And maybe one last time on the Master Gardener?
We're still looking for some people to fill the Master Gardener. We take 24 people. We have a few spots left in that. And also our very popular last year was our expanded family garden. So that's coming online the first week of May. I think it's the 9th is when it actually starts for programming there. A lot happening into April and May, so we'll have to do that more later.
Now, that's where we were talking about maybe that would be great for grandparents to bring kids.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Any day, we man it on Fridays in the middle of the day.
Okay.
But it's open every day for people to enjoy.
Well, again, thanks. We just touched on some of the things. I mean, you could literally spend all day here.
You can. I hope we could just inspire someone who maybe hasn't been here for a while or has never been here to get inspired about what's happening in that garden someplace in Youngstown.
And again, you've been here, you personally have been here for several years, but the gardens itself have been around for how many?
Mrs. Fella, 58. She passed away in 1958, and so it's been 55 years, 56 years.
And it's always a good idea. If you haven't already, you can join as a friend of Fellows Riverside Gardens.
That's right.
Well, thank you very much, Keith.
You're welcome. Thank you, Bill.
We'll stop back again later in the year to see what's going on.
Let's do that.
Later on. And again, you've been watching Senior Focus. I'm your host, Bill Adams. We come to you a couple times each month through Armstrong's Channel 20 and 100. Thank you to Greg Roten from Armstrong. And again, if you missed part of the show or you just want to see that the whole section again, you could go on demand on Armstrong or also go to YouTube and just type in Senior Focus and Armstrong Cable and you'll be able to find it. Until next time, thanks for watching.